with 50% glucose, 50% fructose. When you look at the biochemistry of this and the role of insulin, that is just forcing the fructose straight into fat. I was stunned when I went back and looked at the biochemistry of it all. I thought, I can't believe that we've missed it. You know, we've got conjuring this whole thing about low-fat diets. In fact, it wasn't the fat at all. It's the fructose and the carbohydrates that's causing us to get fat. Simple. It's the enzyme activation. It's this nutrient petitioning. Is the one thing one of the take-homes out of this is nutrient petitioning caused by hormones. You've got one hormone this way from fructose getting into ATP and then to fat. You've got a heap of them coming through from glucose. This is the one that nobody told their body to switch it off. So we've gone from eating 2 kilos of sugar to probably 50 or 60 kilos of sugar here. We get fat. So we're eating more, obviously, but the big thing in my view, we're eating sugar, which we didn't do, we're eating more refined carbohydrate, but it's this term here, metabolic chaos. Their bodies just aren't coping with the whole insult, if you like, or onslaught of these unusual things that we didn't eat before. And when you look at it, all the symptoms of what I'm terming metabolic chaos, obesity, rampant in the world today, diabetes is one of the biggest human health problems in the Western world, coronary heart disease, chronic fatigue, candidiasis, sleep apnea. There's a whole heap written on that. Nocturia, which is frequency urination in the night, again can be caused by this. Diabetes, renal failure, circulation, erectile dysfunction in men. Just drive around the cities and look at the billboards up there now. Again, start reading about that. Again, and just to put it in context, with insulin and obesity, 2 hormones, lipoprotein lipase, which on by insulin, forces the fatty acids into the fat cell, and it can't get out because the insulin switches off hormone sensitive, I suppose. It's just a lay down was there, forces it in, can't get out, to do with insulin. So let's talk about horses. How long have we got, by the way?
As long as you like.
Okay. So let's talk about this. Does anybody not know what that is? We've never heard of it. All heard of it? And it's a term that...
Yeah, there's people who look across me and say, am I game enough to say anything?
Yeah, no, please. I mean, there's never a dumb question.
Oh, no.
You don't.
No.
This,
I've been drummed into them.
Yeah.
up until probably, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago, this term just wasn't around, you know, because we weren't thinking about it. We're all talking starch. And then all of a sudden, the Americans actually termed this, and it came through Equine Analytical, Dairy 1, where they measured starch, the water-soluble carbohydrate, and ethanol-soluble carbohydrate, and they came up with this term non-structural carbohydrate. Bob said to me, what is starch? I mean, it's structural, but it's the difference between the cellulose and these things here that are actually degraded to produce glucose. And if there's one number you've got to remember is that I would contend 90% of the horses today in the world that we live in don't need any more than that. We don't ride them enough and we feed them too much.
So is that 12 to 15%?
Percent in the dry matter. So what Nerida Richards, who did her PhD again at Armidale in starch digestion in horses, she then wrote Feed Excel and manages that. She does a lot of work with us. So one of her students, we then collect up as many feeds as we could, and we sent them off to America. And we just measured NSC content, just for interest's sake, to see where it's at. So there's, it's moved up to 12 to 15%. The names don't matter. I'm not here to talk about other people's feeds at all, except to say that you've got calm, cool, ice, extra cool, calm, cool and calm pony rider mix. This thing here was 45% sugar at start. 45%, you know. So to me, there's no labelling requirement in the world yet, obviously, because the feed companies are just they couldn't do it if they did. My point being is there's nothing wrong if you've got exercise going this way and they're actually using it. Where I think it's irresponsible is if mothers are walking in to buy something for their kids and they see this with a nice name, says, well, it doesn't matter, or whatever, it says cool, whatever, and they think, well, that's a nice feed, it's got a pretty picture and all, take it home and the kid, the horse goes mad because he's on nearly 50% sugar and starch. That's a problem. The red arrows are there just to show you some of the feeds that we took to do some further research on. Did the same in the US, there it was up to 30%. We've actually taken more since then and up to, I think, 40%. And did the same in the UK. So let's then talk about horses. What are they telling us? That if I think there's a problem, what are they telling us? We've got horses that, we all know about that. We've got fat horses. We've got horses with ulcers. You're doing the trials. Lameness, laminitis, insulin resistance, tying up this equine-metabolic syndrome, which actually covers a lot of those. Cushings, they've never heard of it 10 years ago, and now it's rife in our, not rife, but it's prevalent, they now know, and they're leg problems. So you get horses like these guys, you know, and they're around, you know. We have a nutrition focus group that I run in Armidale once a month, and I said to the purpose on Wednesday, we thought there was, 90% women there, and I said, what's your biggest problem? They said behaviour, bad behaviour with horses. You've got these fat horses, you know. And when you start looking around, I think this is one of Katie Watts from America. She runs that Safer Grass. I think she made that one up. But when you look about, and a vet friend of mine said, look at the horses back in the 50s and 60s, back at the Echo in Brisbane, and compare them today. These are, he called them tricky little ponies, you know, they were pretty good condition. This is what we're now selecting on these obese horses. We talked about ulcers, you know about that. Colic is a massive problem in horses around the world. Tying up in specific breeds, like these guys, quarter horses, these ones here, they used to call it Monday morning sickness, because these guys would be working all week. They'd still feed them on the weekend the same amount. Come Monday morning, they start them up, tie them. So there's two people in America done a huge amount of work on this, and they've shown that it's simply the storage of excess glycogen and an abnormal polysaccharide, somewhere to get rid of the glucose, so they're sticking into muscle cells. This horse here, he was Black Caviar's half brother. They put him down from laminitis. This mare here, biggest stake winner ever, laminitis, they put her down in 2009. Laminitis is the second biggest problem in horses in the world. Leg failures, they call it stocking up, you know, get these massive swollen legs, and there's a reason why that happened. Cushings, this old guy here, mine, he was an old camper, of course I had 34 when he died. Looking at that photo, compared to a Cushing's horse, he may or may not have had it. I don't know, this was pre-Coppermill days. They didn't have a clue what it was at the time when he went down. They're saying it's a problem with, is there any vets here? Good. They're saying that this is a problem with old age horses. To my logic, we've got horses I can take and show you with the vets where we live, 5 to 7 year old. They're not old. So there's something else happening. And you know, I mean, I'm not a vet, you know, so I can't get into that, but there's a differential between what nutritionists think and vets think, because we just think different on this. I think there's a reason behind that as well. Let's just talk about carbohydrate, because to me, we can fix minerals, we can fix protein, but the big one, if we've got any horses that we're feeding, they don't have enough energy. So we can feed them on fibre, we can feed them on all these things, but the starch and the sugar are the ones that have actually changed the most. You've got, if you looked at the electron microscopes, I did this when I was at Armidale, and you just looked at the different forms of grain and the different form of the actual starch granules inside, and they vary. Huge big ones in barley, tiny little tight ones in maize, different ones in oats. The plant breeders have got involved and changed these completely. So now the form has changed, the structure's changed, they're now bound by different proteins like gluten, which didn't exist before. So in humans it's a real problem, but in horses it's changed the whole dynamics again. The fructose, which Chris Pollitt, Professor Pollitt in Brisbane, who's now whatever they call it in the Laminitis Society of the world, he's the grandfather of laminitis. He's actually done all the work on putting fructan into the hindgut of horses, and he's actually precipitated laminitis with that. But what's interesting, fructan is actually the difference between these two. Some of these feeds, there's two of them out there, 8% fructan, which is high as you get in the grasses. So there's a huge amount of fructan that's actually getting through to the hind stomach. It's not digestible in the intestine, getting to the hind stomach and can cause laminitis. So when you look at the correlations between that on this NSC content, it's the starch and the fructan that's got the highest concentration. It's the highest contributor, if you like, to the NSC. So it's how that starch is digested is really critical.